हाँ अब ज्वाइन हो गया।
हेलो। हाँ, एम आई विजिबल? हेलो।
हेलो, यस सर, आपकी आवाज आ रही है, साफ आ रही है, लेकिन सर
हाँ
बैकग्राउंड
मेरी
लाइट कम है। जी सर, आवाज आ रही है
हेलो,
आवाज आ रही है
यस
सर?
आवाज आ रही है?
जो
यस सर, आ
यस
रही
सर।
है। लाइट थोड़ी
कोई
कम है
दिक्कत?
सर।
हाँ, फेस क्लियर है?
यस सर, फेस क्लियर है।
ओके।
सर देखिए सर, आपके फेस से लाइट कम आ रही है, लाइट डार्क है।
क्या इससे ज्यादा नहीं आ पाएगी यहाँ पे लाइट?
ठीक है सर, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है।
मैं कंप्यूटर लैब में बैठा हूँ, यहाँ पे इससे ज्यादा लाइट नहीं है।
ठीक है सर,
डन
ठीक
डन
है,
डन।
कोई दिक्कत नहीं।
अच्छा।
हमारी आवाज आ रही है सर?
हाँ, आपकी आवाज आ रही है।
ठीक है, म्यूट कर दूं फिर अपना?
हाँ, म्यूट कर दीजिए आप।
ओके।
अच्छा, आप लोग उस पे दोनों चीज देखते रहिएगा, जो भी क्वेरीज आती हैं तो उनको इस पे पोस्ट कर दीजिएगा फिर। ठीक है?
डन डन डन, ओके सर।
ठीक है सर। गुड मॉर्निंग कुशवाहा सर, गुड मॉर्निंग। हेलो सर, आपकी आवाज सुनाई नहीं दे रही है। कुशवाहा सर, आपका माइक म्यूट है।
हेलो हेलो।
हाँ सर, अब आवाज आई सर, आपका
आई एम
माइक म्यूट।
ऑडिबल?
मिस्टर भागवत, आर यू ऑडिबल? एम आई ऑडिबल टू यू?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir, and you are
सर,
visible
you
too.
please
I am
share
all
your
set.
first see you as well as your slides will be on proper way, मतलब proper चलती रहे सर slides।
That's right. So I have just switched on my video now. Am I visible? Hello
सर, you
to
are
everyone. Good
not right
morning.
now, अभी तक आप visible नहीं है।
नो, यू आर विजिबल।
Sir,
Hello
you are
everyone.
not visible to us. Yes, now.
Mhm.
Hello, am I
Hello,
visible?
हेलो।
yes. You are
Hello, sir.
visible
Very
to
good
me.
morning.
हाँ,
Good morning, everyone.
And sir, you can share the your presentation after from the bottom. That is from present now. You can share your presentation.
Yeah, I will. I will. Just a second.
तो डॉक्टर श्रीवास्तव,
Yes, sir.
शुड स्टार्ट?
Sir, within 5 minutes. I hope so. Chairman sir will join within 5 minutes.
ओके ओके।
So let wait a minute. I'm just be here. Within a minute, I will be here.
ओके ओके।
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Am I audible clearly?
Yeah.
Okay. Within a few minutes, but I shall just start within a few minutes. Make मैं दीपक से confirm कर लूँ. So, Kushwaha sir, shall we start?
Our chairman is online now.
Sir, he is not on, but he may join within few minutes because as per the discussion with Ankur, sir, he told
Yeah.
us that you may start.
So,
Uh,
okay. Let us start now.
let us start. Shall we start now? एक मिनट में और एक बार कंफर्म कर लेता हूँ अगर उनका फोन लग जाता है तो. So, sir, we shall start.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello
So,
and welcome to all the participants in the 3-day FDP of outcome-based education. As we all know that nowadays the accreditation is as well as NAC is very much compulsory to be in the race of this education system or in technical education. So we all required the accreditation to be in the race. And here today we have a 3-day session on outcome-based education with Mr. Ajay Bhagwat, the director in North India Limited, Pune, and he will discuss with the situations that practical situation that may occur in the accreditation, that is the COPO and PO attainments, as well as the how to discuss the situation for weaker students. These are some of the practical things that may occur during the literature work of accreditation. So I shall request our Dean R&D, Mr. D.S. Kushwaha sir, to have a welcome to all the dignitaries who had joined and as well as the participants who had joined this 3-day FDP. Over to Kushwaha sir. Kushwaha sir, please.
Okay, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Honorable Chairman, our Dean Academics and Deputy Director, Mr. Rajesh Singh, and Assistant Director, Mr. Sharma, and our Director, Mr. D.P. Singh. It is a very pleasant day that during the pandemic period, our chairman is providing the fearless atmosphere for doing job for the educational development. Now, we are talking about the CO and PO. I have studied ancient history during the Nalanda period. That system was introduced in Nalanda University. So now, government of India has decided to change the previous dynamics of the education and to change the fluence of the education system, that education should be go from east to west, which was now from west to east. So in this connection, during this pandemic period, we are very pleased to find a guest uh, who is full of wisdom, that known as Mr. Ajay Bhagavat. He has a big domain, global domain of experience in the variety of the spectrums of the techniques to develop the education system in India. So I welcome to Mr. Bhagavat to give some tools and techniques that we may proceed again. Now, in case of Mr. Bhagavat, it will be least to tell about him because he is a big boss in the sector of that educational tools. And government of India has decided for every college up to 22 to become accredited, that is NAC or NBA. So in NBA, CO and PO system is introduced. So Mr. Bhagavat is expert in this line. So everybody should welcome to Mr. Bhagavat to deliver his techniques for this group, so we may acquire the huge knowledge and we may perform the NBA activities. Thank you. Over to Srivastava. Hello. Over to DK Srivastava. Hello. 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 Hello.
Hello, Dr.
Hello.
Srivastava. You're on mute.
Mr. Srivastava.
Yeah, sir. Am I audible to you
So
now?
Yes, you are audible.
over to Mr. DK Srivastava now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. It's our great pleasure that our chairman, sir, has joined for the
Okay.
blessings to fruitfully conduct this 3-day FDP. So I would request our chairman, sir, to please have a few words and blessings to us. Sir, chairman, sir. Chairman, sir. Chairman, sir. I think so. There will be some technical glitch over there. That's why he was not able to contact us right now. And with he because he had joined in this session, he is in the room, but I don't think so. What the reason behind it that he was not able to join us. Within a few seconds, I think so. He may be. So within a few seconds, he will join. Now, I shall explain something regarding this situation of outcome-based education, and Mr. Bhagwat will take a brief discussion about the fundamentals of outcome-based education as well as the advanced concept of outcome-based education. The second day will be of our discussion of advanced-based outcome-based education, and the last day will be the CO and PO attainment, computation, as well as the identifying the weaker students and remedial action. So these are the 3-day topics that will be discussed in detail by our guest, Mr. Bhagwat, and sir, I shall now over to Bhagwat sir for start the session, and I hope so the chairman sir will join in the session in between them. Then we shall have to take the blessings from him in the session. So over to Bhagwat sir to start the session. So Mr. Bhagwat, please.
Thank you so much for the welcome, Dr. Dharmesh, Dr. Kushwa, and other dignitaries present today. And Chairman Sir, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to join all of you here to deliver this webinar FDP program on outcomes-based education. I will enjoy this interaction with all of you, and also, I will also have an opportunity to learn from each one of you, because all of you are the real practitioners of outcomes-based education and all other educational processes. Know the challenges at the ground, and we all at Inpods always respect the actual challenges that educators face in the real world while delivering the teaching and implementing modern techniques like outcome-based education. So these interactions with many senior educators from across the various regions of India.
Mr.
Right
Bhagwat,
from,
I shall want to interrupt you within a second, for a second. Our chairman sir had joined right now, so
Okay, great.
please, I shall want to have a blessings with our chairman sir to inaugurate the session. So,
Absolutely.
chairman sir,
सर नमस्कार, नमस्कार सभी को नमस्कार
a very good morning.
Namaste.
सर, स्वागत है आपका।
Namaste, sir. Thank you so
अजय
much.
भगवान साहब, सर सब बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। बड़ी आप तारीफ कर रहे थे, कल काफी देर
Thank
आपके विषय में चर्चा किया डीके श्रीवास्तव जी ने, और बहुत तारीफ कर रहे थे। तो मैंने कहा सर हमको भी देखेंगे, बैठेंगे आपसे, अच्छा लगेगा। मुझको लगता है कि आपके संरक्षण में हमारी फैकल्टी और हमारे जो भी हमारे साथी लोग हैं, ये बड़ा डेवलप करेंगे, और ये सेशन बहुत ही फैंटास्टिक होने वाला है। डीके श्रीवास्तव जी बहुत अच्छा करते रहते हैं, और हमारी सारी फैकल्टी और आपको बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। उम्मीद करता हूँ कि भविष्य में भी आप लगातार इस तरह का सपोर्ट मिलेगा तो बड़ा अच्छा लगेगा। बहुत अच्छा लगा, और बड़ी ग्रेट पर्सनालिटी है, और बहुत अच्छा लगा आपको, और कल बहुत मेरी तारीफ सुनी आपसे। धन्यवाद, थैंक यू सर, मोस्ट वेलकम। और मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ इस देश को, इस राष्ट्र को अच्छी दिशा में पहुंचाने के लिए आप जैसे लोगों की जरूरत है, और अच्छा होगा, बहुत अच्छा होगा। थैंक यू सर, प्लीज कंटिन्यू सर।
सर हम स्टार्ट करें इसको सर? सर आपकी परमिशन से हम इसको स्टार्ट करें?
हाँ सर। अरे सर प्लीज कंटिन्यू, स्टार्ट कुछ नहीं, परमिशन जरूरत है नहीं इसमें।
थैंक्स फॉर द काइंड वर्ड सर।
थैंक यू सर, नमस्कार सभी को।
नाउ यू प्लीज मे कंटिन्यू सर।
सब लोग पूरा लाभ उठाइएगा भाई, सारी फैकल्टी पूरा लाभ उठाए, और बहुत ही अटेंशन होकर सुनिएगा। सर का पूरा एक्सपीरियंस है इतने सालों का, तो आप लोग बहुत लाभ उठाइएगा और बहुत अच्छे से सुनिएगा इसको। थैंक यू सर, प्लीज कंटिन्यू।
Srivastava ji, I will now. Is the streaming on? Everything is fine now.
Everything is on, sir. You just please proceed. Everything is on the line.
So just for the, just to save the bandwidth at my end, I will switch off my camera and then now share the presentation.
Okay, no problem.
Yes. So Professor Dharmesh and few of other colleagues of Professor Dharmesh had attended some of our webinars, and I think that's where the interaction with Professor Dharmesh started, and he encouraged me to conduct this FDP for your institution, and I happily agreed to do so, because that's something that is my passion too, to talk about outcomes-based education. I was like sharing the experience about how we all at Inpods started learning about outcomes-based education. So what happens is that when we start developing technology solution for somebody to solve a real-world problem, we can't be patchy, we can't be away from the ground reality, right? And we also can be away from the theory, of something that we want to implement as a technology solution. So we end up studying a lot. So we all at Inpods, not only me, but my colleagues also, are very passionate education technologists, and they learn a lot from senior educators like you, and those who are practitioners. We read a lot of research material also. I have participated in research conducted by Florida Technology in the US, and the area of research was how to teach software testing to online, that to the professionals and the practitioners, or to the budding software engineers, how to teach them using some modern techniques and tools. And that gave me that created an interest in me to learn more about also the teaching and education in general. And I got fortunately this opportunity to be part of this organization, and that where I could further take my passion to the next level about developing solution for education world. So today, so what because our focus on OBE, we have special knowledge about this, which I'm going to share with all of you. This is something that we kept on learning from interactions with our customers, many private universities, large private universities, and very top-notch institutions in India. And that helped us get a fantastic insight into what should be done when it comes to implementing outcomes-based education. So this whole topic is divided into 3 1-hour session. The first session is I'm going to cover a little bit fundamental. Many of you must have been already aware of these foundational blocks of outcome-based education. But just to create a common understanding, a context to start discussing more advanced level concepts of outcome-based education, we need to come at one common page. And then so that's the reason I will cover a bit of theory and some small concepts of outcome-based education, and then I will give an idea about how program outcomes are designed, why they are important, and then it will help us start discussions on top-down program design, and then that takes us to the discussion about how to design the course outcomes. So this is our main agenda of the day today. We have around 45 to 50 minutes to cover this today, and then tomorrow we will have more detailed discussion about this. So before we go ahead, we have to unlearn a few things. In our colloquial language, or we are used to call undergraduate or postgraduate degree program as a course, and we end up saying that BSc is a course, BCom is a course, although it may be right, and it is an accepted term even officially, but in the field of outcomes-based education, it is called as program. And it is very important learning that we have to do, because when I talk about outcomes at the program level, I mean that those are at the graduate level or undergraduate level outcomes. And when we come to courses, in the term that is used in OBE, a course means a subject in an undergraduate program, like financial law or microeconomics or operating systems or machine design or strength of material. These could be the courses. And when I talk about a course outcome, those are the outcomes at the course level. So when the teacher teaches a course, the outcomes related that are to be looked after by the teacher are the course level outcomes. and the program designer, the HOD or dean or the principal of the or the senior educationist in the institution, the organization, will have to worry about the program level outcomes, so that's the actually huge variation in the application of the outcomes, and that's the reason these terms have to be understood really clearly. Here it is, we will just create a context of our discussion, so that it helps us build other advanced level concepts on top of this. Outcomes are at the level of program or a course or instruction unit. So you whenever it comes to thinking about outcome-based education, you always have to start from the top. So look from the top to bottom, and then this perspective at the top will be, the specs that you have to wear at the top are of program outcomes, and through the program outcomes you have to see how many courses you see in your program which are related to these program outcomes. If a student learns a course and achieves certain outcomes at the course level, whether the student will be able to achieve the program level outcomes, and from that is the spectacles that you have to wear when it comes to OBE, and then these specs are of program outcomes. And when you open the box of the course, you will see small units, maybe 5 or 6 units, and the outcomes at the unit level are instructional level, instruction unit level outcomes. You may want to define those, or you may not want to define those. That is optional, but the mandatorily you have to define course level outcomes and program level outcomes. Outcome-based education is an approach to education in which decisions about the curriculum exit learning outcomes that the student should display at the end of the program. So, since outcome-based education is about continuous improvement activity, the impact of the analysis, the outcomes or the insights that you get, the wisdom that you collect from the analysis done by virtue of implementing OBE will help you to take decisions about the curriculum, because these gaps that are shown by the analysis will be related to the outcomes achieved by the students at each level, and these strengths and the weaknesses or the hotspots shown by the analysis will reflect not only on the students who have learned or have not learned certain things up to the level of expectation, but that if you ask 3 times why why these students did not learn, you may get some answer. Then you once again ask why to the answer that you got, and then you once again ask why to the answer that you got, and that will help you go to reach to the bottom of the problem, and that might be related with some curriculum design. It might be related to the way the instructional delivery is happening, or it might be something related to lack of some equipment in the lab. It could be anything like that. So it's not only focused, or it need not be just the analysis that is done by you may not only show you that the weaker students are not learning enough, and then there are many weak students. That is not the only thing that you will get out of it. You may be able to find out some more issues in the process which could be fixed without even having to invest anything. It is just about small step towards improvement, and that small step may not even require a single rupee investment. It could be just changing something there, some process that requires to be a change. And these changes that are required, the decisions about this change will be driven by the analysis of that you do at the end of outcome-based education implementation, because that's the goal of implementing it. So just to stress this more on why outcome-based education is important and how it is related with continuous improvement, let me show you this depiction. So the student who takes an admission is interested in learning, and inside this building, these are the only two important core processes happen. One is teaching, other is learning. Teaching is done by the teacher, learning is done by the student. And when the student finishes the graduation, the student exhibits certain characteristics. The person who took the admission in the first year and the person goes out of the college building after the graduation is over is a different person, and this person possesses certain characteristics. What those characteristics should be are defined by many researchers in education field, many senior educators, and some accreditation bodies like ABET, NBA, NAC. They all are talking same language about graduate attributes and the program outcomes, which primarily divided into three major categories, which are called as knowledge, skill, and attitude. And there could be 5 program outcomes, there could be 10 program outcomes, or there could be 15 program outcomes of those specific programs. It could be some engineering program, management program, or in pharmacy, or any such art, science, commerce college as a related program. But they all have to define what those program level outcomes are, and these program outcomes have to be divided into 3 categories, like which are called as knowledge, skill, and attitude categories. So these are called as graduate attributes or program outcomes, which are the definitions. These are the statements or definitions of what the student should be able to exhibit at the end of the graduation. And why? Because the student will have a dream of either taking a job somewhere immediately, or going for higher education, or becoming a self-employed person. One of these 3 things should be in the mind when the student goes out of the institution. Even social status, achieving just social status and running family business could be the goal of the student who graduates. But finally, the aim of the student is to become a person who is different than when the admission was taken under day 1. And this difference is what is the effectiveness of the process of teaching and the learning. So when we start analyzing whether 500 students, let's say, are graduating every year from the institution, how many of them are said to have achieved these outcomes at the program level? This answer could not be binary. Yes or no may not be possible, because there could be some minor character, the facets, or which also can be called as some the performance indicators if we associated with these program outcomes. And looking at that, you may be able to say, let's say, out of 500 students, 350 students could be above these certain threshold levels. And I could say that, okay, out of 350 students, some of them were good in certain outcomes that are defined in knowledge level. Some of them were good in certain skills. Some of them were good in emotional intelligence, and they were good team players. And they exhibited that they could lead a team also at times whenever situation arisen. So this is the way you will be able to create a profile of the graduating students. And then those who, according to you, could not achieve these outcomes with some kind of levels that you had in mind about defining whether or not the student has achieved these goals, rather outcomes. You may want to then look at them as the gaps in the process, somewhere in the process of teaching and the learning. And these gaps will have to be identified and then improved on, and that's nothing but the outcome-based education and continuous improvement. So that next year, instead of 350, you may say that 375 students could achieve those outcomes, or 400 students could achieve the outcomes. So this number is supposed to grow in the future by virtue of the processes that are improved, enhanced, which are related to teaching and the learning. Because these are the two core processes. The teacher, when he stands or she stands in the classroom to deliver a lecture, there are quite a few things that happen before this teacher enters into the classroom. There are decisions about the curriculum design. There are decisions about the way the instruction has to be delivered. There are decisions about how the course delivery has to be planned, which is something called as course file. So, and how to assess the student, what kind of questions should be asked, what is the marking system, what is the pass and fail decision system. So these are the teaching processes which are already defined, and with the context, with the backup of all these processes that are there before the teacher enters into the classroom, are not visible to the student directly. These are institutional level processes, and the student is on the other side of the table, receiving end of the process, and that's why they are limited. Their attention, their span, and their influence is related only to the learning part of it. So fundamentally, let's look at it as teaching and learning. Although teaching has lot many processes before the actual teaching happens in the classroom, but when it comes to the student, it is only the teaching that is the interface the student sees, and the learning that happens at the student end. So we will talk about only these two important core processes of the teaching and the learning. So I'm going to now take this thought a little further, deeper, and try to find out whether this makes sense in terms of the OB implementation, and then we'll try to relate these aspects of the teaching learning with the outcomes of the program, and then we'll see how the program outcomes, program design can be done from top to bottom, by taking these concepts further into the design of program. Let's see whether we can do that. And please feel free to ask your questions anytime. I'm also going to flash some slides which will have questions on it, and I will encourage you to answer those questions separately, and I will also give you what the right answer is. So when the teacher stands in the classroom and delivers the content, what actually happens is that knowledge is being delivered by the teacher. And this knowledge has 4 dimensions. One is factual, second is conceptual, third is procedural, and fourth is metacognitive. The definition of these terms is given at the bottom of my screen. Factual is knowledge of terminology. Conceptual is theories, models, and the structures. Procedural is knowledge of subject-specific skills and algorithms, and metacognitive is self-assessment. You may want to compare or relate these with the courses that you teach, and see whether at what level your course, the knowledge that you deliver, from your course fits here, where it fits, at factual and conceptual both, or conceptual procedural both, and or all of the 3, or all of 4. You may be able to judge that pretty well. You may say that there is a less of factual, more of conceptual, less of conceptual, more of procedural, but I don't know what is about, what this is about, metacognitive. This seems to be some foreign term. You may say that. But, if my opinion, you may have a different opinion about this, but in my opinion, metacognitive knowledge delivery happens everywhere. It's part and parcel of everything. Take example of this FDP right now. What I am right now talking about is factual and conceptual knowledge. We are yet to reach the procedural knowledge. and that is going to happen tomorrow and day after tomorrow. A lot will be there about the procedural knowledge, and less will be about the factual knowledge. So we are also going to go through these three fundamental dimensions of the knowledge, and the metacognitive knowledge also will be there. Right from the next slide, you will see what I mean by metacognitive, which is about the self-assessment. So when I ask you a question, and if you start thinking about what the right answer is, that's about metacognition. That's about self-assessment. Whether I know the answer and how far I know what the answer could be. Maybe I have some idea. I might be 25% correct, and that is a self-assessment. So if you ask a question to a student, hey, tell me what do you know about this? The student is likely to tell what exactly the student knows. But if you tell the student, hey, tell me what you don't know about this, the student will start thinking about what I don't know. And that is something that is triggering a thought in the mind, triggering a process in the student's mind about self-assessment. So the same question, but a little, some change in the verb, and suddenly the purpose changes. Suddenly the impact changes. And that is nothing but creating this ability in the student about self-assessment. So it is also beyond that. The term is pretty wide. We'll see about, learn more about it as we go on. But this is just to give you a slight idea quickly here to define, explain what these four dimensions are. So teacher is responsible for factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive knowledge that is being delivered every day when the teacher walks into the classroom. And look at the receiving end, who are the students. What is happening at their end? They are learning something. So their process is going through remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. These are the 6 fundamental steps of learning of any human being, because this is nothing but cognitive process. So it applies everyone, applies to everyone, not only students, but the primary goal of the students every day when they are students is to learn. When they walk into the campus of a college, their role begins, starts, their learning process begins. And that's why we have to talk in this context of students here. Remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create are the 6 important steps through which any human being learns new knowledge. And this is called as cognitive process. And this is also famously known as Bloom's taxonomy, because these steps are identified and defined by Bloom's, and then it is also kind of modified a little bit in the by others researchers. And now this is the accepted 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, modified Bloom's taxonomy, that are used by educationists. So this is what it is. Teacher teaches the knowledge, and student learns it. But when the learning is happening, it is always through these 6 steps. So regardless of whether you are teaching factual knowledge, it will basically the student is likely to go through the same steps. At the bottom of my screen, I have given some inputs about what is cognition. It's a mental action or the process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thoughts, experience, and senses. Recalling is nothing but remembering something. Interpreting is understanding. Organizing is about applying something, right? Testing is about analysis. Producing is about evaluation, and maybe creating also some part of it. And constructing is also about creating. So these are, it is said that when you are, by the way, the first 3 levels, remember, understand, apply, is called as lower order thinking skills. and remaining are called as higher order thinking skills. So focus is on thinking, and these are skills of thinking, and applying of these thoughts, ideas that are there in the mind are going to happen through using body parts, maybe hand or speech, communication. So these are all the psychomotor skills which are used by the human beings to apply those thoughts. So that is another type of I mean when you think about uh, the thoughts in the mind are to be converted into reality, put into the practice. At that time, only the mind is not going to help. You will require some body parts or some the tools, computers, or some kind of machining tools, or anything like that to achieve something, and to be able to use that, let's say modern tools, CNC machines or computers or tablets or mobiles. These are all gadgets, that electronic gadgets that are around us, and human beings are learning to use those. But there could be some robots also. Robotic processes are required. um, to learn that also requires some kind of higher order thinking skills, and implementation of though that is possible only by putting some human bodies into place to actual experiencing how it should be used. So that's about the psychomotor skills of the human beings. And when it comes to dealing with others, when it comes to self-assessing and understand what I don't know about this, and then having trying to go and learning about it is nothing but lifelong skill that also comes in picture. So cognitive process is just the beginning of that thing. But when it comes to implementation or working with others, lifelong learning, assessing ourselves, leading others, it requires soft skill, more emotional intelligence, and that's the third part of human capabilities, which are very important. And together these three things, absorption of the knowledge, ability to think, ability to use body, and the modern tools to implement those ideas, and working with others, learning about ourselves, knowing what I don't know, and then becoming a team player, that will help us becoming lifelong learner. So these are the three important categories you can see now. Knowledge, skill, and attitude are related to all this everything here. So with this, let's go to the next step and see whether we could now self-assess what we have discussed so far. So the question is, which of the following are four knowledge dimensions, which we just discussed about? So there are four options, and you have to select the right option out of these four. Anyone who quickly want to identify which one is the right one? So that's the option number 3, which is correct: factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. So let's take our discussion further to the next step. We are now we are aware about the teaching, learning, and the knowledge dimension and the cognitive process that we just discussed here, right? So what the teacher is doing here is, after the teaching is done, the teacher is asking a question. Hey, to assess where the students are. The question, the knowledge that I'm delivering is supposed to be at, let's say, understand level. If the student is able to uh, express that, interpret it, and then communicate in his or her own words, I would say that it's the student has learned it. So let me ask a question about factual or conceptual, right? And then let me assess where the students are. How many of them could give the answers, satisfactorily? How many of them have given the answer partially correct, and how many of them have not really done any great job in interpreting it? They are remembering some, patches are there. Their memory doesn't seem to have been recalling it correctly. What I just communicated, taught. Not all of them. Out of 60 children, let's say 20 could do and could interpret it. 20 could do, and another 20 could not do beyond recalling. So those who just could recall, they are at remember level. Those who could partially understand, I would still say that okay, they are there, slightly there. And those who could really do good job, obviously they have understood it. So I'd say that out of 60, uh, kind of, maybe 75% students have achieved it, and 25% could not achieve it. So that's the assessment that I have done. It is not about the passing and the failing. It is not about how many of them are above 35%. It's something else. It is more about the cognitive process. It is not directly about numbers of the marks. It may require a mental rubric in the teacher's mind, and then think about these aspects. What will I, when will I say that a student has really interpreted something correctly? When will I say that they did not fully interpret it, as per my experience? When I will say that they did not interpret it correctly at all? So this could be a mental rubric in mind when you ask a question, and quickly that happens in with lightning fast speed. And a teacher even may not know that this kind of mental rubric is there all the time, but actually an experienced teacher can always have this kind of mental rubrics, and they can quickly realize where the students are. So it's about that. And so that's the reason, that's the fundamental reason of asking the question, to know where the students are, how far, how out of this the class that is sitting in front of me, how many of them have achieved the desired level of cognition. I wanted them to be at apply level. How many of them could actually write the program, for example? How many of them could actually use this formula and understand what the stress will be in this particular structure at that particular point, right? And so you have given them the method of taught them the fundamentals, given the how you derived at the formula, the elements of this formula are explained, and now you want them to, or you also have given them some an example how to calculate the stress. And now you want you thrown a different problem, a different situation, and you wanted them to apply that theory that you have just taught. And you are expecting them to be at apply level. How many of them are apply level, right? And then you really can't when you give marks out of 10, you say that okay, if I would say that all the steps are correctly written but the answer is incorrect, you will still give full marks, right? Because you are giving importance to the process followed by them and not the actual answer. You may cut 1 mark or 2 marks, but not full marks, right? So that's nothing but the rubric that you have in mind about say checking how many students have really applied it, understood, but really could not apply it fully. They could not calculate the stress correctly. And those who just remembered, I mean, they could not really do anything more than writing a few steps, and then they made the mistakes and they went somewhere else. They could not solve it and all that. So those are into maybe remember level, or may not be there at all. So that's the way you will always kind of you actually do that as a teacher, but it doesn't reflect anywhere, because we are so kind of tuned to just looking at the marks, and that's why although this is happening, it is not coming out. So implementation of outcome-based education is not something that is a complete change around us. It's not at all like that. It's there. We have to just start recognizing it. Nothing more than that. Giving some importance and bringing out the analysis which is already happening, but it is hidden under this layer of our traditional way of looking at the answers given by the students, whether the student has scored 5, 4, 3 out of 5. But actually, when we are assigning those marks, we are actually identifying how many of them are at remember level, understand level, and apply level in this particular case. And all we have to do is categorize those students in these 3, 4 categories, and then bring out some analysis out of it. That's nothing but implementation of outcome-based education is. So here is the question. Teacher asks a question to find what gaps are in their cognitive process, know where they stand as per the steps in cognitive process, grade their answers, pass or fail them. By the way, this is multiple answer choice question. So you may find 3 correct answers or 2 correct answers to this question. Anyone would like to try? Okay, the first 2 options are correct. Find what gaps are in their cognitive process and know where they stand as per the steps in the cognitive process. The third may be right, but not in the context of OBE. So this is this slide will summarize what we've just discussed. So a student is exposed to questions, and these questions are part of our direct and indirect assessments. Direct are your continuous assessment tips, internal assessments, or the summative assessments which are conducted by your affiliating university. Or if you are an autonomous college, you are the the examination controller. So these are all direct assessments, and indirect ones are something that are responded by the student as sharing their opinion about whether or not they learned something, which could be a survey, or which could be which is conducted at the end of the course to know whether they have learned the desired outcomes of the course. And something could be like conducting a survey after a guest lecture or after an industrial visit, whether they learn something or not. If you want to just assess what happened after an activity, that's and if it is not to be a typical exam and grading of the answers, it could be just an opinion that is collected, and that those could be called as indirect assessments. And but however, these assessments have some questions. Either those are to be graded by the student teachers, or it is just the student's response, one directional response, and that is it. But however, it's a question that is framed there, and the grading will happen either manually, or there could be some assessments which are peer graded, that is a student grades other students answers. That's also a possibility, or it could be auto graded. So it could be a group activity also, in which a lot of discussion happens within the students. So it's nothing but the peer grading that happens. They learn from each other, they correct themselves, supposed to, and then finally the grading also happens by the teacher. Auto grading is typically the objective questions, true or false, or MCQs, match the pair, or fill in the blank, something like that. And there the answer key is known to the system, and then auto grading is happening. But however, at the end of the day, if we go beyond just the marks, we will find gaps in the outcomes and the cognitive processes also. So outcomes in terms of course outcomes or program outcomes, and the cognitive. So how many of them were expected to be at apply? I know that 100% students will not be able to apply something that I've just taught to them 15 minutes before. So, but what is my expectation? Out of 60, should I expect at least 40% students should be able to do that? Or 60% students should be able to do that? Or 20% students should be able to do that? And if this is already decided by you or by the institution, or between you and your course coordinator or your dean or the HOD, then based on these, the gaps could be identified. Whether how many I was expecting 20% to be at apply level, but there are only 15%, so 5% is the gap. Or there are 30%, there are more students at that level, so that's wonderful. And then it will show some gaps in the curriculum design also, instruction delivery also, because this is not just about ability of the students to learn. It may be about something to be changed in the teaching process also. It can't be just learning process that can come under the scanner. If you ask, also analyze it further, you may find that something to be done in the teaching process also. And then it goes back to the questions that you will ask to find out whether there are any gaps. And that's the loop of continuous improvement. Any questions so far? And how are we doing as far as the time is concerned?
The session is going very well, and there is no question till now. So you may proceed
Mhm.
as you are proceeding, sir. You may proceed.
Okay. Sure. So this is 12:23 right now, and we have another 15 minutes are sufficient for us to
Yeah, yeah,
finish our session.
not an issue, not
Yeah.
an issue, sir. Please.
Okay, great, great. So let's summarize what we have discussed so far. We started at our discussion at the by defining the uh, outcomes-based education, what it is about, and why the outcomes are important. We discussed the core teaching learning process and what the student should exhibit as graduate level attributes. And these attributes we were thinking about, divided into three buckets or categories, like knowledge, skill, and attitude. And then we thought that let's look at why if there are some gaps in these three categories of the POs, what could be the reason of that. And then we were looking at the teaching learning process. We identified the dimensions of the knowledge, and we talked about the cognitive process dimensions. And then we then took the discussion to why the question is being asked, to exactly doing what. That's the discussion we did. And then we move on to essentially the discussion about the continuous process cycle of to identify the gaps and take the corrective actions, and once again frame the questions such a way that you will be able to continue to identify the gaps in the outcomes and the cognitive process. So that's the cycle that we discussed in the previous slide. Now we will take our journey towards the classification of the PO, which we actually touched upon this concept in the beginning of our discussion. So now we will start a deeper discussion on classification of the POs. But I have given you some hints about the way the knowledge is being absorbed, which is cognitive process, and when it comes to implementation that is going on in mind, we talked about some skills requirement to do something actually, right? And then we also kind of try to understand what is the importance of emotional intelligence here, and that is something related with the attitude of the human beings and the students that comes in picture. So we can clearly, distinctly see now that okay, we have divided into these three categories, and there could be some statements which are related to knowledge part, whether, and those will be then always be talking about how these knowledge dimensions are being absorbed, delivered by the teacher, and how the knowledge is being absorbed. So that covers the knowledge category. The second part is skills that right to be exhibited by the students. And while these two things are happening, the everything that is in knowledge and the skill, the bigger circle is actually the attitude, which encompasses both the categories of the peers. It can't be separated out. They are everywhere, and we will try to see why it is so. Together, by the way, this is called as competence, and we will see how they all come together as a competence. So we know factual and conceptual knowledge, which is basic elements the student should know, or the interrelationship between the basic elements. If you are able to find that out, relationship between two different dots, then you said to have been able to form some kind of common understanding between the two concepts, which are independently learned in isolation. You are able to now connect those two dots. So that means that you have understood about the relationship between them. So this is let's put this into this type of knowledge. Whenever you deliver this type of knowledge, let's put that into knowledge category of the outcomes. When you teach them about processes, how to do something, methods, skills, techniques, they require skill to do that, right? And then it could be just analytical skills also, which is a mental process. But when you are trying to express what is happening in your mind, you have to use, let's say, Excel sheet. You have to know how to arrange the data, use the tool to create the plot the diagram there. So it requires use of modern tools. You have to know something about the application called Excel book, and then create that kind of graph or something else. So it's about doing something, and it is skill. And the third is attitude, which is about metacognitive, how individuals act, and especially how they interact with others. Could be related with attitude, and then together this forms competence in the outcomes, which is the habitual and judicious use of following aspect in daily practice for the benefit of the individual and community being served: communication, knowledge, technical skills, reasoning, emotion, values, and reflection, which is self-assessment. That is the competence. And this competence, you can see that communication, knowledge is obviously related, factual, conceptual knowledge. Communication, technical skill could be related to procedural knowledge, and skills, and emotions, values, reflections are about attitude. And developing that, or helping only the student to realize that itself is creating an ability of which is related to metacognitive knowledge dimension. So let's look at now example from each category. Knowledge: understand the nature and basic concepts of cell biology, biochemistry, taxonomy, and ecology could be related to knowledge. Apply the knowledge of mathematics, science, engineering fundamentals, and an engineering specialization to the solution of complex engineering problems. It's basically an ability to, it's basically knowledge of mathematics, science, and engineering, more fundamental level knowledge that is required to uh, solve some complex engineering problems. So this may be related to knowledge and may cross the boundary a little bit to the procedure also, you may argue. But that's fine, because these are not really definite fixed boundaries that are there, but they may overlap a little bit here and there. But for this, to avoid confusion, you may have to stop somewhere and then decide, okay, this is the PO that is related to knowledge, This is skill level. This is metacognitive level, right? So you may find some overlap here and there, but because this is not a kind of a mathematical formula of arriving at one fixed binary number. The skill could be foster analytical and critical thinking abilities for database decision making, or modern tool usage to create, select, apply appropriate techniques, resources, and modern engineering and IT tools, including prediction and modeling to complex engineering activities. These are all related to skills. And the third could be your metacognitive level, ethics, engineering and society, ability to lead themselves. These are the three examples related to attitude. If you look at the specifications of National Board of Accreditation, you will find that out of 12 in engineering education I am referring to, out of 12, 6 are devoted to attitude. So a lot of importance is given to metacognitive skills and knowledge and metacognitive level outcomes rather than knowledge and skill level outcomes. I'm going to now ask you 3 questions and want you to identify what is the category of this program outcome. This is about understand the nature and so it is related to knowledge category of the PO. Honor the personal values and apply ethical principles in professional and social context. It is about attitude category. And the third is about foster analytical and critical thinking abilities for database decision making. It is about the skill category of the POs. So now that our discussion takes us to the next level, we in this section we will quickly discuss about top-down approach of program design. But tomorrow we are going to discuss this in details. So this is actually an opening for tomorrow's discussion. So you carry this thought forward today and then recall this tomorrow before tomorrow's session. So top down, this is the program at the top. As I mentioned to you earlier, you wear the spec of program outcomes and look at the courses that are taught in all the semesters or the terms and think about why a certain course is there and what program outcomes this course is supposed to deliver out of the set of program outcomes which have to be in the category of knowledge, skill, and behavior or attitude. That is the fundamental requirement of OB, and you have to have program outcomes related to one of these categories, and rather all these categories. So there could be a set of program outcome, there could be a set of 10 program outcomes, or there could be a set of 15 program outcomes. They all have to be related with knowledge, skill, and behavior. And based on that, you will be able to identify which course belongs to what PO. So here in this case, let's say PO1 is a knowledge category PO. The course associated with it also is supposed to be delivering knowledge components, right? Like factual, conceptual. There could be a course which is a mix of two types of categories of the PO. It is serving a PO1, which is knowledge category PO. It is also serving PO6, which is a skill category PO. So this is a dual. This course has a dual association, and that's why I've colored it a little differently. It shows that it has got some knowledge that is to be delivered, which is associated with PO6, and PO6 belongs to skill category. Now, when I start thinking about designing the course outcomes, what I should do, I should look at what is the relationship of my course with the program outcome. Is it related to knowledge, skill, or attitude? And that will give me a wonderful idea of what is the scope of my course. And based on that, I will be able to choose the right, the scope of my course outcome statements. Because I need to take the students to a level at which, uh, the level at which the student should be able to say that they have achieved these course outcomes, and that's why they are also able to achieve some program outcome because of which this course exists. Otherwise, the course has no meaning. It is just an orphaned course which has absolutely no purpose of being there, and because of which the students are not going to learn anything about the program level outcomes. So, why such a course is there? Why, I mean, it may be useful. You believe that it is required, but then it means that there is some mistake in the defining the program level outcomes. If you believe that a mechanical engineering student should learn something, but it doesn't have any relation with any of the program outcomes, then the program outcomes are wrong, because you believe that this course is important. You believe that because of this course, the student can get a job there in the specific type of industry, and that's the reason it's there. So if you believe that this current set of program outcomes are not serving the purpose of the real outcomes, that not real, I mean the others are also real, but the other outcome that you also want to be part of the top category of the POs, then you add one more PO, and which we can call as PSO, program specific outcome, and then associate your course with that. If you believe that the course cannot be taken out, should be there, and then you associate it with program specific outcome, and then you measure whether the program specific outcomes are being met or not by looking at the performance of the students. And that's why these course outcomes have a direct relationship with what program outcomes the course outcomes are supposed to meet. So unless and until there is you have to first find out what is the relationship of my course with the program outcome, and then start thinking about what the course outcome should be. And the other way of looking at that, rather, I would not say the only way to look at that, is to identify what knowledge level dimension my course is covering. Factual, conceptual, or only factual, more of conceptual, less of factual, whatever that you want to classify your course as, that is required to be this process, and then you design your course outcome. So the first step is to identify what the relationship of my course with the PO is. Second is what knowledge dimension my course is covering, and then based on that you design your course outcomes. And since the course outcomes have to be measured, we have to ask the questions to see whether or not students are achieving those desired cognitive process levels, right? And then that's the reason, you must have heard, or also you must be already doing that, you are mapping your course questions with Bloom's taxonomy levels, right? So that's the reason for mapping these Bloom's taxonomy levels with the questions, to define that this question belongs to apply level. And it means that I must analyze where the students are, in this cognitive process dimension. How many of them have achieved apply level of cognitive process by analyzing the answers given by the students. That's the purpose of mapping a course with the BTL, which is Bloom's taxonomy level. Short form is BTL. So you can define based on the level at which you want to assess the students. You can limit the scope of your questions to that level. So if you are teaching factual knowledge or conceptual knowledge, you are not supposed to go to analysis level of Bloom's taxonomy. It's not required. If your course is also teaching some skill level outcomes, then naturally we have to take them to apply. You have to take them to analyze based on the knowledge that you are covering in through your course. Covering in the sense you are delivering through your course. So this is the top-down design of a program. It is about identifying the program level outcomes, identifying the relationship of the course with the program outcomes, and then it is about identifying the course outcomes by looking at the knowledge dimensions that the course is delivering, and then designing the questions by looking at what cognitive level the student is supposed to be assessed at. That's the complete relationship of all the various elements of outcome-based education. Any questions so far? Please feel free to pass it on to me. So I have a question for you here. If a course has a dual association with POs from knowledge and skill categories, it is best described as this course is 1, 2, 3, 4. Please choose, select the right choice. The correct answer is it is expected to deliver. First is the right choice. Factual plus conceptual plus procedural knowledge. Now, quickly, course outcomes designing. What is a course outcome? It is course outcomes are what the student should be able to do at the end of the course. It is an effective ability, including attributes, skills, and the knowledge to successfully carry out some activity which is identified. And the most important aspect of a course outcome is that measurable. We discussed about this and why it should be measurable. We have absolutely clear idea now about it. We know that the students will learn well when they are clear about what they should be able to do at the end of the course, or the assessment is in alignment with what they are expected to do, or instructional activities are designed and conducted to facilitate them to acquire what they are expected to achieve. If this is where students will learn well. If you have any other points to be added here, please let me know. I will continuously improve my slide decks. In this diagram, what I have done is I have put the knowledge dimension at one end and the cognitive process dimension on the other side. And I have created a matrix of what is a zone that gets covered when I talk, for example, conceptual and understand. Let's say I'm teaching some conceptual knowledge and I want student to be assessed at understand level only. They should be able to just, construct meaning from instructional messages, including oral, written, and graphic communication. If I just want to limit my scope only up to that, then I will say that if my outcome of my course, one of the course outcomes should be related to conceptual and understand. So what keyword I will choose? I will say classify. I'll say classify X, Y, Z, whatever, right? That is specific to the course that I'm teaching. So I don't know what that could be. But what I'm saying here is that you choose the classify as a starting point of your statement. And then you have to think about what that it is that is related to your course. And that becomes the first important part of the course outcome statement. This combination of these two components, classify dash dash dash, and that's the course outcome statement. If you are teaching conceptual knowledge and if you want the students to be assessed at apply level, which is something like carry out or use a procedure to in a given situation, then you will say that provide would be the keyword that you will be able to start, and then you say dash dash dash. That's the knowledge component. Knowledge component means you have to define what that is that they should apply and show me something, carry out something. So that's procedure you will define there, which you want them to show you. So this is the way you can actually do the define the course outcomes. If you are teaching factual and you want just them to be at remember level, you can simply list this, right? And then if they are able to list, that means they are able to recall something, and you're okay with that. But if you're teaching factual knowledge, and then you want them to be at apply level, that's still possible. And then you may want to start the key, the statement with respond with something, and then show you that how they are able to carry out some procedure in a given situation. So this is the way you have to identify the scope of the course that you are teaching, identify what level you want the students to be assessed at on the scale of this cognitive process dimension, and then define your course outcome. So now if this is clear to you, I'm pretty sure that this technique is now extremely crystal clear. So action verb is coming from this our dimension right here, and which is apply, classify, clarify. And the knowledge part of the statement of the course outcome is coming from the factual, conceptual, or procedural or metacognitive knowledge that you are covering. So that's really specific to your course. So that dash part of the knowledge component has to be related with what exactly you want them to do. The condition in which they should be able to show you, if you want that they should use this particular tool, that particular technique, this model, that model, then you are defining that, hey, you should show me this by using this model only, not the other model. And then only then I will say that you have achieved the outcome. And some criteria also. After you apply that model, the answer that you gave me should be compared with some standard that is already defined by me somewhere. So you're asking them to also compare and come out with why there are some gaps, if at all there are any gaps. And that's ability to compare. And then I will say that, oh, you have now achieved the outcome because you're also able to compare it. So the four parts of the outcome statement are important, but the bottom two are optional. You may want to use it or you may not want to use it. But the most fundamental, without which any course outcome statement will be incomplete, are the two top components, action and knowledge. Those have to be there. Let's look at the three examples of fantastic quality course outcomes that I have come across. So this is coming directly from the NAC manual. Describe general taxonomic rules on animal classification. Describe starts with the right keyword there, action verb. And knowledge is there, general taxonomic rules. Condition on animal classification. There is no criteria, that's fine. Another example. It's a very good example of course outcome statements. And the third example has all the four components. Could you see this? And now, quickly, we will cover do's and don'ts. Use only one action word. Do not use words like such as, different, etc. with respect to knowledge elements. Enumerate all the knowledge elements. Put in efforts to make the CO's statement as specific as possible and measurable. Do not make it either too abstract or too specific. And now three examples of incorrect COs. One is a student will execute mini projects. These are actually the instructional activities designed to facilitate movement of COs by the learner, but not themselves as COs. Will get knowledge of protection schemes for generator, transformer, induction motor. So this is a transition. Will get knowledge. This is a transition, but this itself is not a course outcome. And the third poor example is this. Actually, it started pretty well, but it became extremely vague later on. Nothing is clearly defined. What apply? Some problem technique skills. Nothing is specifically mentioned. That's why this is also an incorrect example. So let's stop here today and then carry further, carry this thought further to our tomorrow's session. So right now, from today's session, I want to stop here now and take questions if any, or conclude.
Thank you very much, sir. And
Welcome.
if there are any queries that will be available on the chat box, and I'm just going through that, and I think so there should not be any queries, sir. I think you had explained so well that there should not any doubt in the mind of the participants, and it is a very informative session. Now,
Mm.
hello, hello.
Hello.
Hello, yes. Now I would like to invite our Dean, sir, Dr. Kushwaha, sir, to summarize the session. Kushwaha, sir, please summarize
Okay.
the today's session, sir.
Today, the lecture of Mr. Bhagavat is very fruitful. He has categorized the knowledge, actual, tactical, and cognitive, and also how to teach the students and what type of phenomena should be adopted. So it is very good, and no doubt this lesson will give the new structure, new spectrum to the teachers and students also. So uh, I thank you, and I thanks to Mr. Bhagavat very much that he has settled here such type of phenomena of the teaching. So that will be fruitful in our accreditation.
Okay.
So and it should be truly followed by our faculties
Writing this,
and
I
other things.
really appreciate
Thank you, Mr.
you for
Bhagavat.
words. I look forward to the next tomorrow's session.
Thank you.
For the kind words.
Should we conclude, Dr. Professor Dharmesh Srivastava?
Of course, that today's session will be ended, sir. But there is an announcement to all the participants. Please listen carefully,
Hello?
sir. Hello,
Hello?
Am I audible? Am I
Yeah,
audible?
you're audible. You
Sir,
are.
there is an announcement to all the participants. There is an
Uh-huh.
important announcement. Due to the lockdown condition, sir, the session which is to be held on Saturday, that is on 18th, has been preponed and will be continued tomorrow after the second session. I repeat once again that the session which is to be held on Saturday, that is 18th of July, has been preponed, means that session will be held tomorrow after the second, means the third session will be held tomorrow after the second session with a break of 15 minutes. And I apology for this inconvenience because of this lockdown condition, and on Saturday there is a total lockdown in UP state. That's why we are preponing the session and it will be held on tomorrow. Thank you, sir. And now we end the session and we shall meet tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. sharp. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all the
Thank you.
participants. Thank you, sir.
Bye bye. Take care. Good day.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.